Chapter 6, Into the Unknown. G'day everyone, Rune here, and this is Chapter 6 of my What If Pokemon Raised Ash story. If you're new to this story, click the link in the description below to be taken to the playlist. Now let's begin the next chapter. A bone-deep tiredness settles over Professor Oak like a thick blanket as he ends the call with his grandson. He had hoped that the boy and his friends had given up on their theory that the child that Go and Chloe had run into during his camp was the son of his former student years ago. There was no way that a baby, barely 1 year old, could have survived that fire. As much as he regrets that he'd never been able to meet the child in person, or known about the fire before it was too late to save mother or child, it's pointless to cling to a false hope that Ash had miraculously survived. Yet, here he is, having just gotten off the phone with his grandson after being forewarned that they currently have a guest at the lab. A guest that Gary and his friends have reason to believe is the baby boy that died 9 years ago. As much as Oak appreciates the thought, he can't help the pang of sadness for his grandson and his friends. Even if the boy they currently have staying over shares a resemblance to Ash, there's no logical way he could be Delia's son. They've been at this for years now, and every time they've believed they've found him, they always end up returning home with gloomy demeanors and broken hearts. At least he has a few hours before he arrives to mentally and emotionally prepare himself to let his grandson and his friends down gently. Okay, Wild, easy does it. Just hold out your hand and Charmeleon will shift back as needed. Wild does as instructed, holding his hand out as far as it will go in front of him. He almost flinches as he feels the heat drawing closer to his hand, but restrains himself. He hears Gary telling Charmeleon that he's close enough before giving the Raven encouraging words. Wild focuses on the heat just in front of his hand while he tries to slow his racing heart. He knows that he's safe. He knows that neither Gary nor Charmeleon will let him get hurt. But still, the knowledge that an open flame, even a small one like the one on the tip of Charmeleon's tail, is that close is making his nerves go haywire. Gary continues to give the two encouragement as they sit, Wild's hand a few inches away from a fire he can't see. After a few minutes, Gary tells them to take a break, causing Wild to breathe a soft sigh of relief. As he retracts his hand, he hears the door to the room being opened and activates his aura sense to see who's coming in. Beyond the darkness of the blindfold covering his eyes, he begins to see the outlines of everything around him. Rai-sensei is still in the corner with Tumble, the two having insisted on being present for Wild's exposure therapy sessions just in case. Gary to his left and Charmeleon in front of him. They're all looking at the door now, at whoever has decided to enter. Turning his head, he sees the outlines of Go and Chloe that are swiftly becoming familiar, but with them is an outline he's never seen before. It's taller and older than any of them. Not as old as Rai, but Wild doubts that there's anyone alive, aside from the legendaries, that's anywhere near as old as Rai. Despite the age of the man's aura, there's something about it that reminds him of Gary. He turns to Gary, making sure that his mental channels are open for the sake of politeness, and asks if the old man is the grandfather he said would be coming today. Even without his aura sense, Wild would still be able to feel the pride and joy radiating off of the brunette as he confirms. He then tells Wild that they'll stop their session for the day, as he wants to introduce them properly. Wild nods as he reaches up to remove his blindfold. Wincing slightly as the light suddenly hits his eyes, he blinks a few times before turning to the man that is Gary's grandfather. Smiling, he taps his fist to his chest twice. "Hello, Mr. Gary's grandpa. You can call me Wild. It's nice to meet you." Oak stares at the child sitting in front of him in shock. There's no way it could possibly be, but he knows those eyes. Those bright brown orbs are exactly the same as Delia's. The child is the exact same age his son would be if he'd survived. But it's impossible. He was an infant when that fire happened. There was nothing left of the mother or the son. Nothing but ashes. And yet here, sitting right in front of him, is a boy that has Delia's eyes. A boy that is now looking at him with a confused expression. Realizing that he's been staring at the boy for a while, he shakes himself before putting on a smile, returning the greeting and introducing himself as Professor Oak, albeit a little late. The boy, Wild he reminds himself, smiles and gets to his feet. Or at least that's what it seemed like until the child was suddenly floating a good few inches off the ground, sitting cross-legged in midair. With as much calm as he can muster, Oak asks Gary if he can have a quick word with him. Agreeing easily, Gary exits the room with his grandpa, leaving his house guests to entertain each other. The two don't say a word until they reach Oak's office, where, instead of taking a seat at his desk, Oak instead decides to sit at the small coffee table, resting his head on the back of his folded hands with a sigh. Gary takes a seat next to him, waiting for his grandpa to speak first. After a long moment, the elder Oak finally breaks the silence. With a voice full of exhaustion, he admits that the boy does look a lot like Delia's son, but there's no guarantee that he is. Gary groans in frustration, asking his grandpa why he's like this. He'd thought that he'd be happy at the possibility that the son of his student is alive and well. Oak turns to look directly at Gary, asking if that's why he's so determined to find someone to be Ash. Gary opens his mouth to protest that he's not trying to find someone to play Ash, but is cut off by Oak raising his hand. He asks his grandson what he'd do if the boy was Ash. What does he hope to achieve? Is it to return something that they think Ash lost? Is it to have the satisfaction of solving a mystery everyone else thought had gone cold? Is it to satisfy their own curiosity? It's been 9 years since that fire. The home that Delia had tried to make is long gone, along with everything that could have ever been returned to her child. Even if Ash did survive, he would have an entirely different family now. One that he's lived all of his known life with. The boy in there has lived 9 years, not even knowing the name Delia, and with those he loves. What does proving that he's Delia's son achieve aside from making him mourn for a woman that he doesn't even remember? Gary is silent for a moment before he answers. He's never been in that kind of situation. After all, he grew up with both of his parents and his grandpa. He never lost anything like that. But if it were him, he thinks he would still want someone to tell him the truth. He'd want honesty and the chance to mourn rather than live a lie. He'd also want to know the truth of what happened. He'd want his mom to have justice. And that's never going to happen if the mystery stays cold. He looks his grandpa in the eyes and tells him that he knows he's not the only one. He reminds his grandpa of the friend he, Go, and Chloe made a few months ago before looking at the floor. Wild fully thinks that he's a Pokemon too. Oak sighs, a little more sad than tired this time, telling his grandson that he just wants to make sure that Gary isn't doing this for the wrong reasons. Because he thinks he might be right this time. A few days pass with Wild, Tumble, and Rye living at the Oak Lab. During that time, Wild has slowly been getting more used to being around Charmeleon's fire while trying to figure out why the older Oak always seems so weird around him, and wondering when he's finally going to go on a mission with his new friends. One bright, sunny Wednesday afternoon, a week later, he finally gets his wish. Wild is just preparing himself for another day of waiting for another mystery while going through another round of exposure therapy when Go bursts into the main room waving a piece of paper. Who wants to go to Johto? While Wild blinks, completely confused, Gary leans back in his seat to look at Go. Tone calm and unbothered, as if this is the most normal thing in the world, he asks if they've gotten another job. Hearing that, Wild's eyes light up with hope and excitement as Go nods with a big grin. Wild throws his arms into the air with a whoop. Finally! His first mission as a member of the Mystery Squad! Chloe plucks the paper from Go's hand and begins to look it over, her eyes scanning the strange squiggles on it. After a moment, she raises an eyebrow. Foster? She turns to Gary, asking if that isn't the name of one of his grandfather's former students. Gary confirms before turning to Go and asking if he's sure that the letter wasn't intended for his grandpa. Go huffs, looking offended, but before he can say anything, Chloe confirms that the letter is addressed to them. She reads it out loud for everyone to hear. Turns out, this man, Foster, is now a researcher and archaeologist working on discovering the history behind the ruins of Elf. After hearing about their group from Professor Oak, he thought that they'd be interested in a temporary job as research assistants. Go nods enthusiastically before turning to everyone else in the room. So we're going, right? The ruins of Alpha are home to some of the biggest urban legends in Johto. Gary rolls his eyes in amusement, agreeing easily as he rarely gets the chance to go out on missions. Wild throws his arms in the air happily, saying that he's absolutely in. This is the first job they've gotten since he and Tumble joined. No way is he missing out on this. Just one question. What's a research assistant? Go is positively vibrating with excitement as they approach the ruins of Alph. Ancient ruins are always a gold mine of mysteries and weird stuff, and the ruins of Alph have been surrounded by mysterious happenings for centuries. This was going to be epic! Unable to wait another minute, he's the first one off of the bus as it pulls up to the road leading to the cabin that the researchers had set up as a base of operations. Right behind him, equally excited to start his first mission, is Wild, with Tumble ever present on his shoulder. Another reason that Go is so excited. They've, so far, had zero luck in gleaming anything about Wild's past. Granted, they've been more focused on helping him with his pyrophobia, and are still waiting for their friend to get back to them. But this mission could give them some great insight into how the Wild Boy ticks. Not even the unseasonal fog could dampen their mood. The two boys race to the cabin as the rest of their group trail behind at a much more reasonable pace, far too used to the more energetic members' antics at this point. Until Rai suddenly stops and looks around, his aura senses slightly lifted. Noticing this, Chloe asks what's wrong. Rai frowns, telling her that something is off. Closing his eyes, he extends his aura senses before his eyes suddenly snap open and he's running in the direction that Wild, Go, and Tumble had gone, like all of the distortion wielders after them. Chloe gasps in shock, asking what's going on. She's about to go after him when he shouts over his shoulder for her to stay where she is. Stay there and don't enter the fog. Whatever happens, just stay there. If they're not back in 24 hours, go right back to Oak Lab. Chloe stares after the ancient Pokemon, her heart sinking. Something is seriously wrong. Go is the first to reach the door despite Wild levitating, something he suspects the Raven did on purpose so he wouldn't have to try opening it himself. Grabbing the handle, Go opens the door with a flourish and walks in, announcing their arrival very loudly. The Mystery Squad has arrived! Go's words are cut off in a startled shriek as he finds a Scyther standing right in front of him, a blade pointed at his neck. Wild's frantic telepathy sounds in his head as the boy tries to calm the Scyther down, explaining that they'd been asked to come by a man named Professor Foster and that they didn't mean to frighten him. A voice calls out, telling the Scyther to stand down. With a final sideways look, the Scyther backs off, walking to stand next to a girl with shoulder-length purple hair and wearing a scout suit. She apologizes to them for the rough reception, but she gets the feeling that they're not aware of what's been happening. It's at this moment that Gary and Rai catch up, both looking frantic and out of breath. Rai turns to Wild and Tumble, looking very upset as he asks them what he's told them about forgetting to pay attention to their surroundings. Wild and Tumble stare worriedly at their uncle as they ask him what's wrong. With a sigh, he tells them to extend their aura senses. Confused, they do as they're told, and their eyes instantly widen in shock and fear. That's not good. With a grimace, the girl gestures for them to follow her into the back room, where they find Professor Foster sitting at a table with two other men in lab coats. All of their clothes are disheveled and there are bags under their eyes. They look like they haven't gotten a decent night's sleep in weeks. Upon hearing the door open, Foster looks up from the table and instantly spots the girl and the other children. Eyes widening in panic, he jumps to his feet, exclaiming that he'd completely forgotten that he'd invited them and that they need to leave right now. The girl tells the professor to calm down. It's already too late to send them home, so they need to explain what's going on. Foster collapses back into his chair, shoulders slumped in defeat. Slowly, everyone takes a seat at the table as the girl begins to explain. Starting off, she introduces herself as Bugsy, explaining that she's the leader of Azalea Town. This surprises Go, as he thought that the Azalea Town gym leader was a boy. Maybe he should visit Johto more often if he's getting wrong information from secondary sources. All thoughts of other missions in Johto are blown from his mind, however, as Bugsy explains what's going on. About a week after Foster had sent that letter, members of the team had started to go missing. As a member of the Ruins Exploration and Preservation Club, as well as a gym leader, she'd been asked to come and investigate. Her first order of business had been to get everyone who hadn't disappeared to evacuate the ruins. However, when they tried, they found the whole area blanketed in fog, and any attempts to leave simply found them right back where they started. They now know, thanks to them, that the fog only works one way. People can come in, but they can't go out. Anyways, after they realized that they couldn't leave, they began to look into the fog and anything else strange going on. However, as they searched for answers as to what's going on, more of them began to disappear. The 4 of them are all that remains of the original team. Go feels a shiver run up his spine. Looking into urban legends and solving long cold cases is one thing, but this is starting to sound like something out of a horror movie. He looks over as Wild says that he and Rai can tell them what's causing the fog, shocking the scientists. Embarrassed, he says that he wasn't paying attention earlier, which is why he entered the fog and forced Rai to come after him and tumble. But when he'd extended his aura senses, he was able to sense the aura of Pokemon in it. And not just one. There were at least a dozen of them putting their aura into that fog, and all of them were afraid. But he can't figure out where they are or what's going on. Rai picks up the explanation, telling the group that, because of the pocket that the Pokemon have created, their aura is saturating the whole area. There's no way to narrow down an area to begin searching. Bugsy stands to her feet, asking if they mean that the fog is being created as a kind of defense mechanism by a group of Pokemon. At Rai's confirmation, she turns around and grabs a bug net leaning against the wall. Slinging it over her shoulder, she turns back to the members of the Mystery Squad, telling them that that still gives them something to go off of, which is more than what they had before. Holding out her hand, she asks them to help her find the Pokemon creating the fog and the missing scientists. Go is the first to agree, quickly followed by the rest of the team. It's only then that he realizes that Chloe isn't there. Heart sinking, he asks if anyone has seen her, worried that she's been taken just like the scientists. Rai quickly assuages his fears, explaining that he'd told her to stay in the area outside of the fog. She's safe. Go sighs in relief before turning back to Bugsy, asking where the scientists were last seen. Expression serious, she tells him that they'd all last been seen when they were investigating the ruins. Somewhere in the main chamber, while others had been in the puzzle room. The name catches Go's attention and he asks why they call it that. Bugsy explains that it's a small offshoot building right behind the cabin. They haven't been able to figure out what the building was for, as it's only a single room with some kind of puzzle in the center. Hearing that, Go proclaims they're starting their investigation there. And that, everyone, is where I'm going to leave the story for now. Join me next time as the Mystery Squad try to find the missing scientists and the Pokemon creating the mysterious fog. I'm Rune. See you next chapter.